everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Released in 2023, written and directed by James Gunn, starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Pom Klementif, Bradley Cooper as Rocket, Vin Diesel as Groot, the usual suspects, Sean Gunn. And then we also have, I'm going to butcher this name most likely, Chukwudi Iwuji as the High Evolutionary. I recognized him from Peacemakers, actually a couple different Peacemaker actors and Suicide Squad actors I noticed in this movie. Oh, can't forget Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. Sylvester Stallone makes an appearance, Michael Rosenbaum, Nathan Fillion, can't forget him. So yeah, anyway, this was released this year, 2023. Part of Marvel's Phase 5. I did not get to see it in the theater. I actually watched it for the very first time today for this episode. But Stu, I know you got to see it in the theater twice, right?
Yes. The second time was not on purpose. I was supposed to go see The Flash with you for that screening, but they didn't have any more room, so we chose to go see Guardians for a second time. And I actually liked it better the second time.
So what was your initial reaction to it when you saw it the first time?
I really liked it, but I felt that the first one was better. And then going into it the second time, I was like, yo, this is easily the best one of the three.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. My initial reaction today, which, I had a similar reaction to Guardians too, is I don't know how, I don't think I like this one. But again, I liked Guardians 2 more the second time around. So maybe I just need to give it another viewing. But number one, I thought it was too long. And I felt myself kind of bored throughout a lot of it. So I
what? I think that might because you watched it at home.
Well, could be.
That might be a factor.
Could be. I did watch it in this room because I didn't want to watch it on for whatever reason, in my living room, even though that's where my 4K player is, I just felt like I either was going to fall asleep on the couch or was going to pause it too much and get distracted. So I sat in this chair and watched it on this TV today. And, yeah,
so
I don't know.
You were sleepy and uncomfortable.
Well, I did get tired. Yes. I was up way too long yesterday. I had a very long day yesterday. So maybe that's another factor. Maybe that plays into it. But yeah, I just, I don't know. It started off really strong, I thought. And then I don't know. It kind of just felt like it dragged a little bit. And there was a couple times where I was like, what is going on? And then eventually those kind of things get answered. And I was like, okay, all right. I mean, like, I didn't take any notes, but one note I had was like, I don't really understand this villain's motivations. And then he does finally kind of go into that a little bit later, talking about wanting to create like a perfect universe. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. But yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't connecting with it for whatever reason. But it very well may be all me. I don't know. I'm curious to, and maybe you'll sway me when you start talking about some of the stuff you liked about it. But like I said, it started off strong. I like the beginning. I like that it's Rocket focused, even though he's kind of unconscious for 90% of the movie. We just see the flashbacks of him. But I like that. I like seeing his origin story. And in the beginning, I liked how Adam Warlock just kind of shows up. It's like his introduction's actually pretty great with the music playing and him flying through space.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he just kind of comes in and destroys this, their town or whatever you want to call it on nowhere. And then flies off. So I was kind of digging it at first. I don't know. I don't know where it went wrong with me. I think it was when they go to and I'm not going to get the name right, but where Nathan Fillion is, where they have like the kind of planet or star base or whatever it is that's just like all goo.
Yeah.
They're there for a very long time.
Organic planet. Yeah.
Organic planet, yeah. I don't know. And I kind of, I'm starting to wonder if I just am not James Gunn's biggest fan, because I kind of also felt like this with Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad, yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. It makes me kind of nervous about Superman, but we'll see, I guess.
With James Gunn, I'm kind of there. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike James Gunn. I very much I do like James Gunn, and I think he's very talented. And I say this, I've said this more than once, but I'm gonna say it again. His strength is characterization and making empathetic characters.
Right.
For everything that I dislike about some of his writing, more specifically his brand of humor,
mm-hmm.
there's always another strength to counter that dislike. And I think that this movie is amongst his best, and there was a lot more that I liked about this movie than probably any other James Gunn movie.
Okay.
Because I felt similar to you about the Suicide Squad. And while that movie did grow on me a little bit, I'm still not crazy about it. Like I've seen it 3 times now. I have to forget about it for a while before I watch it again.
Right.
But yeah, this movie, I was actually looking forward to this rewatch for this episode.
Nice.
But I really admire his ability to make you care about characters that you wouldn't otherwise care about in the hands of most other directors.
Right. I will agree with you there.
He said himself that he's attracted to lesser known oddball characters, and what he does with those characters, I don't think anybody else can do but James Gunn.
Right.
So from that regard, I got to give James Gunn his flowers. Now, with his humor, there was still some of that in this movie, but it didn't bother me quite as much because the other stuff, in my opinion, was so strong. It didn't make me cry. I know it put a lump in some other people's throats. I felt a tiny little pebble in my throat. But,
right.
But yeah, this is I think that this is definitely amongst James Gunn's his best, despite me not being head over heels for the rest of his filmography.
Yeah. I definitely respect James Gunn, and I think he is very talented, like you said, and he definitely is very good with characters, and he can handle large ensembles, obviously.
Yes.
And not make characters feel, a lot of these characters feel fleshed out and very real, not two-dimensional or anything, and
necessary.
Right.
A lot of times we have ensemble casts, you'll have like 3 or 4 characters that kind of fall by the wayside and don't feel like they serve anything to the plot. Everybody in this movie is important in some way. Even Kraglin and Cosmo are very important in the third act.
Right.
So he's very good at making use of all of his characters.
Yeah. And Kraglin and Cosmo was actually I like their dynamic, where he calls her a bad dog, and the whole movie she's basically like, take it back, please. And then of course it pays off at the end. So that was nice. But no, he's so, and even with the Suicide Squad, that big cast, all those characters felt, real, and he did a great job with that. So you're absolutely right. His strength, I think, is creating good, memorable characters, empathetic characters. I kind of agree with you with his humor. Sometimes his humor works for me. Other times it doesn't. Most of the humor in this movie, I don't think really worked that well for me. But I mean, that being said, I like the performances and everything. I thought Chris Pratt did a good job. I thought Dave Bautista did a good job with what he had. They've kind of, I guess Drax has always been kind of dumb. Yeah.
Yeah,
But they
he's
like
been a
really
big
kind of
oaf.
lean heavily on that in I think in 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end with Mantis and everything, he actually got a little bit more depth to his character and whatnot, which I thought was cool. Speaking of Mantis, another thing that I don't love, but I guess it's kind of almost necessary, I suppose, is because they dropped a big bomb. So this movie refers to things that happened in the Guardians Christmas special. That happened, or that was on Disney Plus. I'm worried about Marvel. I mean, I haven't seen the Marvels yet, and I obviously know that Ms. Marvel's in it, who was a Disney Plus show. It's like it's getting. I've seen a lot of negativity about Marvel online lately, and I'm curious if the general public is feeling burnout on Marvel because there was so much content, and like now it seems like you have to watch. I mean, you always had to watch all the movies in order to kind of know what was going on. But now you got to watch the movies and all the Disney Plus shows and everything to really. And so I don't really love. I wish the Disney Plus shows would almost kind of stand on their own without having, and let you be able to watch the movies without having to know what happened on the Disney Plus shows. And so that was one thing, like when he mentions that Mantis is his sister, Peter does. I was like, oh yeah. And that was on the holiday special. So anybody who didn't watch that or doesn't have a Disney Plus subscription who saw this movie would have been like, wait, what? Like that would have kind of come out of left field, which is, I don't know. It's just kind of a nitpicky complaint, I suppose. But like I said, I guess it's kind of, since he put that in the holiday special, it's like they kind of have to mention it in the movie. Another thing that I couldn't remember, and I looked it up online, and as far as I know, I don't think it's in the movies or was in the holiday special. But Nebula has that new arm, and she mentions that Rocket made it for her. And so I guess that just happened in between films or in between stories, because I was like, where'd that come from? Was that in like the end of Endgame or the beginning of Thor or something? And I just don't remember seeing her get that new arm.
I don't remember. I have not watched a Christmas special since last year. And
right.
I haven't watched the entirety of Thor Love and Thunder since last year. I watched like 5 minutes of it when it hit Disney Plus, and it was so cringy I turned it off, and I haven't watched it since.
Did you not watch the whole thing?
Of Thor Love and Thunder?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the Christmas special. Yeah, no, Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh no, I can
understand.
Yeah, I watched the whole Christmas special, but like I said, I watched it a year ago
when it came
out.
Right, same here.
All I remember is Kevin Bacon,
and
Mantis, and Mantis is Peter's sister.
Right.
I think now that I'm talking about it, I think Rocket did gift her a new arm for Christmas. That sounds right.
Yeah,
that feels right.
Yeah, and like I said, so I've seen a lot of hate online for Marvel, which is weird because usually Marvel is like universally loved. And
bro, it's like watching the Titanic sink almost. Like it's like it. The funny thing is, I said this when Endgame came out, that I was afraid for the MCU because they did the unthinkable and made it work, and it came to a wonderful conclusion. It wasn't a perfect conclusion, but it was the best it could have possibly been. And they made the announcement that they were going to keep going into a new saga, and I'm like, I don't know, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want more, but I don't know if we should get more.
Right.
And this is exactly what I was afraid of. The MCU is kind of collapsing on itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's to the point of complete devastation yet. I think they need to do what they have done best, and that is stay the course. Because right now it seems like there's a lot of course correction going on, which we have seen before from another studio, which will not be mentioned.
Right.
And we've seen how
that went.
has turned out.
Yeah.
You know, not staying the course. Some of the negative comments have been warranted. I do think some people are overreacting.
Overly harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely overly harsh. I know a lot of people are concerned about the state of the film industry, especially certain directors. You know, some of their comments. Some people have had harsher comments than others. I know a lot of people were talking about, you know, Martin Scorsese, and what he was saying wasn't wrong. It was just, I think the way he said it kind of rubbed people the wrong way.
Sure. Yeah.
And then there are other directors who are way more harsher than
Martin Scorsese
was. Yeah. You got people like Quentin Tarantino and Ridley Scott who just think the MCU is just complete trash.
Right.
But, you know, I know I went off on a little tangent, but
no, that's all right.
I said all that to say that, you know, it's nice to see that in the midst of all of this chaos within the MCU, that a good movie can still be made.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say. You know, so you said some of the hate online is warranted, and while I don't think necessarily that a lot of the later movies have been like awful, there have been more, we'll say, less good movies than normal for them. Because for a long time, Marvel couldn't make a bad movie, it seemed like. And now, after
they
COVID,
had like 6-7 movies back to back. They were just knocking it out of the park.
Right, exactly. And then after COVID, like, you know, Eternals, which we both love, didn't do well, and people thought it was bad. Spider-Man, of course, was awesome. But then the Thor: Love and Thunder, people didn't like. Quantumania, people didn't like. I think most people like this one. I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got an 84 critic score, but like the audience score is like 94, 96 or something like that. So I think most audiences really like this movie. And then I think a lot of people just hated on the Marvels before the Marvels even came out. But
it's unfortunate because it's a decent movie.
Right. But I've also seen some complaints about some of the Disney Plus shows as well. So I don't know. I'm really curious if it's just burnout, because people like my wife, who, especially once the Disney Plus shows started coming out, she was like, it's too much. I can't keep up with this. I don't have the time. I don't care anymore. And I wonder if it's just kind of the same thing, but I don't know, because you and I both love superhero movies, and so I still really like the MCU, and I'm trying to watch. There's a couple of those Disney shows that I haven't watched yet. Like Loki season 2, I'm still currently watching, but I don't necessarily feel burned out yet on them or anything, and I'm hoping they do well. I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four, and I think that's going to be, well, you know, you're talking about course correction, and I do feel like they do need to stay the course, but having some of these characters, they still have some really good characters on hand that they haven't quite utilized yet. Yeah, like Fantastic Four. Now that, you know, Daredevil, which I know they're doing a new show, but they could put him in movies, and I think that would be amazing. And then the X-Men, of course. So I think we've got some good things from the MCU that we've yet to see, and hopefully they'll do it well. But yeah, for whatever reason, they've just been hitting some speed bumps lately, it seems like.
Yeah. And I'm kind of with you. I don't have, because people are saying that superhero fatigue is a thing, and this is, I'm glad we're talking about this, because James Gunn said the exact thing that I said about superhero movies as of late. He was saying that people aren't tired of superhero movies. People are tired of mediocre superhero movies.
Right.
There's been an abundance of averageness amongst superhero movies, and it's Marvel is to blame. They spoiled us for, you know, a stretch of like 4 or 5 years where they just, like, again, they just knocked it out of the park every time. And now that they had concluded their saga, and, came to a peak with that, with that wonderful culmination, and it's like now you're trying to build something else on top of something that was I can't even I don't even have a word for it. Like it's like trying to build a monument on top of another monument.
Right.
And that monument has a peak on it. You're trying to use that peak as a foundation, and now your new monument is crumbling. Like it's not, like I said, I don't think that there's fatigue of the genre itself. It's just fatigue over the quality of movies that we are getting within that genre, because this is a prime example. People were talking about superhero fatigue, but yet everyone went out and saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and most people love it. Like almost everyone loves this movie. There's another movie that came out recently that everybody loved. I can't remember what it was. I'm drawing
Not
a
the
blank.
Flash. I know that.
No.
Blue Beetle, I feel like was just kind of okay, right?
The Blue Beetle is actually really good. Nobody saw it though.
Right.
Like,
I don't know. I'm trying to think what the other.
It's slipping my mind.
I can't think of another superhero movie that came out this year.
Across the Spider-Verse. That's what.
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Across the Spider-Verse. Another superhero movie that almost everybody loves.
Yeah.
Some people, some people don't like the way it ended, but
Sure.
for the most part, everybody loves that movie, and that came out recently. So the fatigue for the genre is not there. It's just people are tired of just regular average superhero movies.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. We will get back to talking about this movie, but I find this very interesting. So, I don't love going to see mediocre superhero movies either. I obviously want all these superhero movies to be really, really good. I want them to like knock my socks off, but part of the problem I think is there's just so much that and when you've got a movie like Endgame out, or for us, I know there's people don't universally love this movie either, but Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's like those movies are just so good. How do you compete with that? Almost, so it's hard. And it's like, and another thing I was going to mention was you were talking about, Quentin Tarantino and Ridley Scott hating on the MCU. I wonder if they would hate superhero movies less if it wasn't like all that they made nowadays. It, because it used to be we'd have like a couple of big summer blockbuster movies, but then throughout the rest of the year, we'd have the smaller kind of drama, period piece or whatever type of movies, kind of the Oscar movies or whatever you want to call it, throughout the, towards the end of the year and all that stuff. But now, just the way movie studios operate is every movie needs to make $1 billion. So all of the movies they produce now, or like pretty much the only movies they produce now, are these big superhero action blockbuster movies, and that's all that's made. And it's a lot more difficult, unless you're Ridley Scott or Quentin Tarantino, to make an adult drama or something,
Right. And, unfortunately, I hate to say this because that kind of gives credence to what people are saying, but it's kind of the MCU's fault.
Right.
They were so great for so long, and people came out in droves to see their movies, that other studios realized, hey, we need to do what they're doing. And they started making cinematic universes. Like, I never thought The Conjuring would be a cinematic universe.
Right.
I never, when I first, The Conjuring is one of my favorite movies of all time, but I never in a million years would have thought that there are 7 or 8 movies in that universe now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I never would have thought I would have seen that. So it like you said, the goal now is to make $1 billion. If it doesn't make $1 billion, it is a failure. And that has handicapped the industry. Look at look at rom-coms. Rom-coms are no longer in theaters at all anymore.
Right. It's all streaming now.
They're all
they
on
go
Netflix.
straight to streaming, right?
Yeah, rom-coms go straight to Netflix.
Well, and the other problem
we're starting to see we're starting to see like a comeback of the quote unquote raunchy comedy with no hard feelings.
Right.
And there was another comedy that came out last year. I can't remember what it was, but we're starting to see that come back, but it's not looking great right now.
Right. I was going to say the other, I think it is partly the MCU's fault, but it's also, I think streaming, it plays into that too, because
oh, absolutely.
Because movies are so expensive to go see now. And I don't know if that's just inflation, or if it's the studios having to, since they spend so much money on these movies, they require, like, I don't know if that factored into ticket prices increasing, but anyway, general audiences, I feel like when they go to the theater now, they don't want to dish out $30 on tickets and another 40 on concessions or 50 on concessions or whatever to go see a rom-com. They want to see something big and get their money's worth. And so exactly. I think that's another kind of problem. And so they don't mind staying home and watching the rom-coms and stuff at home because it's streaming and it doesn't cost them anything other than their monthly subscription. But if they're going to get out of the house and go to the theater and spend the money because they don't, people like us I don't currently because I can't see any movies with my kid, but people like us have like AMC A-list or whatever. And so it's not quite the same for us, but like regular Joe Blow is going to pay the ticket price and then probably buy concessions. And it's, it costs a lot to go see a movie nowadays. And so they don't want to go see Wolf of Wall. I mean, that's a bad example. Wolf of Wall Street was actually amazing. They don't want to see, sadly, Before Sunrise maybe, or Before Sunset. Cause those, I love those movies. I would gladly pay the ticket price to see those, but general audiences, I don't feel like would feel like it's worth it. They want to see big spectacle for the amount that they're paying, I think. So
yeah. Also,
it's tough.
People have been spoiled. They want to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the movie is good before they go see it.
Yeah.
Before that wasn't even a thing. Like you would just
pay for the Rotten Tomatoes for all that.
Be surprised.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes is the devil.
Yeah.
No, but it's.
If it's a movie I really want to see, I try really hard to avoid seeing the Rotten Tomatoes score because I don't want to be swayed one way or the other. Because it has like a weird psychological effect on you where like if you're really looking forward to the movie, but then you see the Rotten Tomatoes score and it's like a 25% or something, you're like, oh, I guess it sucks. Like you just immediately, and so because there are plenty of movies with low Rotten Tomato scores that I absolutely love, and then there's some with really high Rotten Tomato scores that I think are trash. So it's rotten. It's a flawed. It's a very flawed system. Yeah,
because it's so black or white. It's see it or don't see it.
Right,
and that is such a wrong way to approach art, especially movies.
Yeah,
because movies are so nuanced. There's so much that goes into making a movie. That's not even making a movie. There's so much that goes into telling a good story, let alone making it a $100 million film.
Right.
So to dwindle it down to love it or hate it, see it or don't see it, that is tremendously detrimental to the film. Because not only are you making it black and white, but you're painting this picture of the film. You're painting an inaccurate picture of the film to its target audience.
Right.
Because the people that review the film are not part of the target audience. They are a part. They come from everywhere. For example, I am not the person to show a slasher. I don't like slashers.
Right.
Now, if you got a ghost story, I'm all about that. But don't show me Friday the 13th. Don't show me Halloween. I'm probably not gonna like it.
Right.
So and again, like,
and they don't take
that's something
that into account, right?
Right, and if that's something you like, take my opinion with a grain of salt.
Right.
And like you said, they don't take that into account.
Right. Before Rotten Tomatoes became so big, obviously there were movie reviews, in the newspaper and whatnot. I remember I loved looking / reading the movie reviews in Entertainment Weekly. I used to subscribe. I started subscribing to Entertainment Weekly 30 years ago and only recently kind of stopped my subscription because I realized I would get it in the mail and never look at it because everything's on the internet. I hate to say it because I used to love the magazine, but everything's on the internet now. And they're not
that's how it was with Game Informer. I used to love Game Informer.
Right.
And now it's like, well, I follow IGN on Instagram now,
right.
So I don't need a Game Informer.
Aside from like exclusive interviews, by the time the magazine came in the mail, I knew all that information already because I had seen it online already. It's unfortunate because I used to love Entertainment Weekly. But anyway, I would read those reviews and there was a couple of reviewers in there that I never agreed with. And it was just so obvious reading their reviews that they didn't like certain types of movies, especially probably superhero movies. Unless it was like, The Dark Knight or something. But most of the time they would give something a review and I'd be, I'd have already seen it and I'd read their review and I'd be like, what? Like I did not. And so, and then Rotten Tomatoes takes that and puts it towards, that's a negative review for this movie. And so it's a very flawed system. And I think when Rotten Tomatoes came out, they were, tried explaining like, this is not a grade we have given the movie. We're just, this is a percentage of positive reviews, but that's not how anybody looks at it. People look at it like a grade. So that movie has a 76%, it's like, all right, it's okay. And but it's not really how Rotten Tomatoes is supposed to work, but that's just what we do. I mean, even on Vudu now, you go to Vudu and you click on a movie, it gives you the Rotten Tomato score right there.
Same thing on Peacock.
Yeah.
I wish I could turn it off.
I do too. And it's amazing how many older movies from 20, 25 years ago, before Rotten Tomatoes was really, or before I knew about Rotten Tomatoes, before it was so prevalent, that I thought were amazing movies. And now when I like see them on Vudu or whatever, they've got low scores. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, they're rotten.
Yeah. And I just was like, I had no idea. I thought that was a good movie because I liked it and I paid no attention to what anybody else thought. And I feel like that's
how it should be.
Those were the golden days,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You should probably make that just like a mini episode in itself.
Yeah, I probably should actually. Little bonus episode because we haven't talked about Guardians 3 like at all.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Guardians 3 in like 20 minutes.
Right. So here's my question about Groot. Because Groot, he didn't really die, but because he got like blown up in the first movie and he had to kind of reform, is he not reforming to look the same as he did in the first movie? Because he looks very wide in this movie.
He's bulky. I assume that this Groot is the Groot version of a bodybuilder. That's why he's so big.
Okay. When I first saw it in the trailer, I wondered if they were actually using like a guy in a suit this time around rather than doing it like CG, and I don't think that's the case. But that's what I honestly thought when I first saw Groot.
Yeah, I think it's CG. It looks good. And that's one thing that I love about all three movies, even Volume 2, which I'm not crazy about. It has grown on me a little bit, but I'm not
same here.
Crazy about it. The CGI in all of these movies looks fantastic.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Phenomenal. I love, like, Guardians Volume 2 is a beautiful movie.
Yeah. Well, this one, I mean, I was super impressed with this one. That's you see those animals like Lila and Teefs and stuff, and like they look flawless. And there was even another shot. I don't remember what it is. Maybe when it pops up on screen, I'll point it out. But I remember there was another shot. It might have been like War Pig or something like that. And I was just thinking, this looks amazing.
Yeah. All of those like in the third act, all of those like hybrid cyborg creatures. Like the big bulky guy with the beak and the scales.
Right,
he looked amazing.
Yeah, that guy, he did. The CGI was impeccable in this movie.
Yeah. I forgot what point I was making.
Sorry.
Oh, Groot. So I think I'm not sure where I heard this, but I heard it somewhere, or maybe I read it. But Groot is whenever Groot dies, he spawns another Groot. So this is like the son of the Groot that we were introduced to, which is why he looks he looks different than the previous Groot.
And that's kind of what I figured. I just wasn't it's not really explained, so I wasn't sure. I just was like, why? Because I really love Groot's design from the first film. I think he looks awesome in that movie. And I didn't love the look of him in this. Although I will say the post-credit scene where it's Rocket and Adam Warlock and you don't even know Groot's there until Rocket wakes him up.
And he's massive.
Yeah, he looks amazing in that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't love his design in this movie. He does look really big and bulky. And I guess it's just because I'm comparing it to Volume 1.
Yeah, the way I kind of see Groot in this movie, he's like maybe like a college wrestler, because he's still young, because this is only 5 years after Infinity War or whatever.
Endgame.
Endgame.
Right.
Yeah. So when he came back, he was still a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
When they Hulk snapped everybody back, he was still a teenager, but he's grown a little bit over time. I don't know exactly how much time has passed in between Endgame and this movie, but the way I see him is, he's still kind of young, but he's like he obviously works out, and he has a different physiology than his predecessor. So it didn't bother me that much. I just kind of made my own backstory for his appearance in my head. So that's my headcanon, kind of rationalizing why he looks so different.
Gotcha. So again, not explicitly stated in this movie, but speaking of Groot, I read on IMDb that Groot has like a telepathic kind of link sort of with the people that he's with, so that they can understand him when he says, I am Groot, they hear what he's actually saying. Because that's why Gamora
like that.
That's why Gamora doesn't understand him until the end. And it's like he like gives her that telepathic link apparently. But I could have sworn, and I haven't seen the first movie in forever, but I could have sworn in the first movie they talk about somebody speaking Groot, like speaking that language.
It wasn't the first movie. It was Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
Thor. He took Groot as an elective in school.
That's what it is, right? Yeah. So they changed that for this movie. Well, again, it's not explicitly stated,
like that.
So you could say that's not true. But I read it before. I read it. I was like kind of just skimming IMDb trivia, and saw that before I got to the end of the movie. But then when Gamora understands him, and I thought it was kind of, even though it breaks the fourth wall a little bit, I kind of thought it was why we as an audience understood him at the end when he said, "I love you guys."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, he's telepathically linked with us, the audience, so that we can understand what he's saying.
I hate that. That is not in my headcanon. What's in my headcanon? So
how would you explain the Gamora thing?
Because she was around him enough to kind of learn his inflictions on the word "I am Groot" to kind of she now speaks Groot just by association.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, like that. That's why we were able to understand. We've grown with this character for 3 movies. Of course, we would be able to understand him by the end of the 3rd movie.
Mm-hmm. Right. Plus the Avengers movies. Yeah.
And this might be a reach, but it makes sense, because at least for me, there have been some scenes in Volume 2 and Volume 3 where Groot would be saying something, and I kind of know how it's going to be interpreted by the other character in the scene, just by the way he's saying it and the context of what's going on. So to me, that made complete sense.
Yeah.
All that telepathic link, I don't like that. You could keep that.
Well, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just telling you what I read. I like your way better, honestly, and it's because of the thing with Thor too. I don't like them explaining it one way and then changing it. I would be curious as to what James Gunn's explanation. Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to know what James Gunn's explanation for it in this movie would be. Like, what if you were to ask him why does Gamora understand him at the end? Would he give you the same thing you said, where he's been around Groot enough, or she's been around Groot enough, excuse me, and so she's picked up on the language? Because I think that makes sense too. Yeah. I don't know if Peter Quill understood Groot right away when he met Groot in the first one. I can't remember, but
no, he didn't.
Yeah, so he learned it as well. So yeah, I think your explanation is fine.
Yeah, it's kind of like okay, I got a friend who breeds American bullies, and he got a bully from this Spanish speaking family, and he was trying to speak to the dog, but speak in English, and the dog was not understanding what he was saying, and it dawned on him. He was like, "Oh, this dog understands Spanish." And it's not that the dog understands Spanish. It's the, I guess it's the like the universal meaning of words, because language is just an interpretation for emotion. That's all language is. So he had to figure out a way to bridge that gap without like actually speaking Spanish. Right. So that's kind of how I see Groot and his associates, the rest of the Guardians, understanding what he's saying. It's the emotion that he's conveying, and once you understand how somebody conveys that emotion, then you can understand what they're saying. Just like the movie Arrival. Like we didn't know what them aliens were saying. They didn't even have words. Right. Like they spoke through emotion. That is the gist of what language is. And I think James Gunn understood that from a character standpoint, because his movies are incredibly emotional. So that kind of just ties into, Groot's language and his association with the rest of the Guardians and how they communicate. They don't necessarily communicate with Groot here. That's how we hear it, but they communicate with Groot here. They're probably actually speaking Groot in the movie. They're probably actually saying "I am Groot" within that universe. That's we just funny. Hear it as English because that's how we need to hear it.
Speaking of communication, I remember when the first Guardians movie came out, some smart aleck online basically asked James Gunn why everyone was speaking English, that is in this universe. And right. He responded that they're not. And I think it's on the screen when when they're doing like the lineup, when they're at Nova or whatever. I think it says on there something about a universal translator being like implanted in Peter or something like that. And so he's speaking English, but everybody else is speaking another language, and he is hearing it in English. And we as an audience are hearing it in English because we need to.
I mean, you said it right there. They're speaking English because we need to understand what they're saying. Right. I'm like, duh. Right. Like what kind of question? What kind of question is that? It
has never bothered me that in science fiction, aliens speak English, because I have understood that we English-speaking audiences need to be able to understand them. And I guess you could put them in a different language and put subtitles on the screen, but sometimes it's just easier to speak English.
Yeah.
And so Star Trek has the same thing where there's universal translator built into the computer. And there's actually So my question in this movie was, when they get to Counter Earth, why can't they understand these aliens, whatever you want to call them, these inhabitants? And Mantis later says something about her translator not being able to translate. And I thought, okay, that should have been mentioned when they got to this planet. But also, there's an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine where they encounter this race of beings, and the universal translator does not recognize the language. So they don't understand these people at first. But the more that those people talk, the more the computer processes it, and eventually it translates it, and they are able to communicate. And I thought that should have happened in this movie as well, especially with the whole Jube. Like, it's funny, Drax. I did like that moment with Drax where he starts talking, and Nebula, who I think yells at people a little bit too much in this movie, but she was like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And he goes, "Why didn't you ask?" And I thought I liked that moment. Why didn't you ask? Nobody's thought to ask Drax. That I liked that. But I think, if you're going to do this whole universal translator thing, it should work on eventually work on these people. But that's just a small nitpick. It's not really a big deal. Again, it's just a science fiction thing. It's one of those things where you have to bend the rules to make it work for what you're trying to tell. If it's
it's science fiction.
Right. Right.
You got to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Another quick question for you. How do you feel about this being the first MCU movie to drop the F-bomb?
I loved it. I thought it was a perfect use of the F-bomb.
It was funny. I did laugh at that moment. Yeah. I did wonder, though, like Marvel movies, I know they're all PG-13, so you do have to, and everybody's different, obviously. But I did wonder if, like, there were parents who took their kid to see this movie and then were kind of upset that Marvel is starting to allow F-bombs in their movies.
I'm sure, but they'll get over it. They'll be all right. I mean, if anybody in the MCU is going to use an F-bomb, it would absolutely be Peter Quill. Absolutely.
Maybe so.
So aside from the humor, what did you genuinely dislike about this movie? I'm curious.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything I can pinpoint. It's I was thinking about the plot and how I wasn't and I remember having an issue with Guardians 2 when I saw it for the first time, and I remember thinking in the theater, is this the whole movie? Like, I just thought the plot for that was, and part of the problem I had with Guardians 2 was I thought the characters felt very reactive, which is kind of a screenwriting no-no. Your characters are supposed to be very proactive. And I will say in this movie, they are very proactive.
They are.
But I guess I didn't expect the whole movie to be Rocket on his essentially his deathbed and them trying to save him. I kind of thought that was going to be like the beginning, and then they'd find something that helped Rocket, but it opened the door into something else that revealed this big, I don't know. I expected there to be more to the plot, I guess. And like I said, I think maybe stuff was just, I really think I will enjoy the movie more on a second watch, whenever that is. Because I do feel like certain things I think were just revealed too late for me. Because I remember I had questions throughout the film. Like, I was like, why is this person doing this? What is going on? And then those things are revealed. For me, it just seemed like it took a long time to get there. Because the whole time the High, what's his name? Evolutionary or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like testing stuff on Rocket and creating these animal people. And I was like, the one cool thing about that is I was like, I'm getting very strong Island of Dr. Moreau vibes here. But I just didn't know why he was doing it. I was like, I don't understand this guy. And then he later talks about creating the perfect universe. And I did like how Rocket said, you weren't really trying to create the perfect universe. You just weren't happy with the way things were.
The way they are. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset for it. I don't know. But
I mean, just from the trailer, I kind of knew what he was trying to do, because that scene is in there. Like, you just
gotcha.
You just don't like things the way they are. I was like, okay, so he's trying to make make a perfect world.
Right.
So I guess I went into the movie
knowing that,
or at least expecting it. So the reveal, I guess it wasn't really a reveal to me because I personally thought that was common knowledge. I guess not.
Well, and I'm sure I know I watched the trailer, but it was so long ago. I guess I just didn't remember it. So, yeah, I guess it wasn't common knowledge to me, but maybe if I had seen it when it came out. And I am curious what I would have thought if I had seen this in the theater on a Friday night with a large group of people who wanted to be there, and and maybe I would have liked it more. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, like, normally with superhero movies, the good guy has to stop the bad guy. This is not that movie. They're trying to save their friend, and High Evolutionary is in the way.
Right.
And vice versa. It's really mostly the other way around. The High Evolutionary is trying to get Rocket because he's trying to Rocket is the only thing that he created that had true intelligence. So he was trying to put Rocket's brain, like the way he thinks, inside of his new Animan. And the Guardians, I wouldn't say they were kind of getting in the way, but like the movie is mostly about him trying to find Rocket and complete his perfectionist experiment, but they just so happen to be saving Rocket. So it's not I can see how it could be convoluted, because like the first half of the movie is kind of all over the place. But again, I kind of went into the movie already knowing what was going to happen and what to expect, because James Gunn's movies tend to be a little bit all over the place, but it's because he has so many characters in his movies.
Yeah, and that was actually something
all three of the Guardians movies, the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
There's another movie that I'm thinking of that had a lot of characters in it, but I can't think of it right now. But
and I was gonna say, you kind of made me think of something, talking about being all over the place. Adam Warlock shows up in the very beginning. We see him and his mother, who was in Guardians 2, with the High Evolutionary. And then I don't know I didn't look at the time stamp, but like it feels like we go like 45 minutes or something without seeing him. I was gonna say
it's probably about 45 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time. It's like I mean, it was fine because he works him into the movie okay. I was gonna ask you what you thought about Adam Warlock and Will Poulter.
Okay. My first viewing, I was a little bit disappointed because that tease at the end of Volume 2, I was like, okay, we're getting Adam Warlock, and Adam Warlock is a big deal in the comics. He's not such a big deal in this movie. That disappointed me. However, upon a second watch, and I never disliked the character, but upon a second watch, I really liked Adam Warlock because I understood what James Gunn was trying to do with this character. This version of Adam Warlock is not what we know in the comics. I had to come to terms with that and just accept that. Once I did, I thoroughly enjoyed Adam Warlock. He is a he's a character that is doing what he is told simply because he's being told, and not necessarily because he wants to do it. The gist of this movie, I think the major like theme of this movie is purpose. You see that throughout Peter's story arc. You really see that throughout all of the Guardians story arcs. When Nebula is talking about Drax, she's like, you're not a destroyer, you're a dad. And you kind of see all of these threads and these through lines kind of come to a culmination in this movie thematically. Is like, oh, that's why they were like that in that particular scene, or that's why they were like that in that movie. And with Adam Warlock, he is basically a glorified, not a guard dog, but you know what I mean. Like he's like, go get it, fetch it,
right, yeah.
He's like, but he's so likable because, no pun intended, he has a heart of gold. Even when he killed that little furry thing's owner, he felt terrible about it. He only did it because he was told to, well, he wasn't necessarily told to do it. He was supposed to intimidate that guy, but he killed him. Yeah. that was actually a really funny part in the movie. He's like, what else was I supposed to do? But
you said, show him we mean business. How much more business
like,
can
how
I show him?
I...
Or something like that. Yeah, that was pretty good. I would argue, though, that he doesn't feel bad about killing the guy. He feels bad for the little animal because the animal is sad. Yeah.
Yes, and he doesn't want to make people sad. He's just like I say, he's just doing what he's told. He's still he's technically still a baby. He's an infant.
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about that because when he first shows up, I was like, oh, this guy's, he just looks awesome. Like Will Poulter's really big in this movie. He put on a bunch of muscle.
He looks awesome.
And so when he's beating up the Guardians in the first part of the movie, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a force to be reckoned with. This is going to be kind of cool. And then he's very much kind of almost a B character. And I wasn't...
C character for real.
Yeah, really, yeah. And I wasn't sure if I really liked how dumb they made him, because I was like, we already kind of got the dumb Drax character who's big and strong. I don't know if we need another one. But Will Poulter, I think, does do a good job with it. And you do like him by the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
like I said, I had to come to terms that this is not Adam Warlock from the comics.
Yeah.
It's an original character with the same name, and I just had to accept that. Yeah. Once I accepted that, I really enjoyed watching that character.
And how did you feel about the High Evolutionary? Was that his name? Evolutionary? That character. How did you feel about him?
That's his
villain
name.
Yeah.
He's one of the better villains in the MCU for sure. I've said it before. I'll say it once more. The MCU definitely has a villain problem. And not to get too off subject, but that's one thing that DC has over the MCU, in my opinion, is the villains. Like, if you think about the DC villains, like Orm, Zod, Steppenwolf, the proper version of Steppenwolf,
right? Yeah, the Steppenwolf,
they're all really good. But the MCU definitely has a villain issue. But when they get it right, they really get it right. Thanos, Vulture, Loki, and the High Evolutionary. They're all wonderful villains. I really enjoyed watching. How do you say his name?
I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but the actor's name
is it
Chukwudi Iwuji. I don't know if that's how you say it though.
Chukwudi Iwuji. That sounds right. Yeah, Chukwudi Iwuji. He really knocks it out of the park with his performance. He is. I kind of like him because he's fascinated by life and science, but it is to the detriment of not only his test subjects, but to himself. And we see that in the third act when his lead scientist is like, yo, why are you obsessing over this thing? We are about to die.
Right.
We got to get out of here. I'm taking over. Like, you're crazy. We got to go. So I really enjoyed watching it. Every time he was on screen, I was interested.
Yeah. I think he does. I think the actor does a fantastic job. He's, especially having seen him on Peacemaker and how different of a character he is.
Oh, yeah. Night and day.
So he's a very strong actor. And I definitely see why James Gunn, brought him onto this movie as well. I want to know more about the character, though, really. I think I'm just intrigued by who he is, where he came from. They mention in the movie that there are certain places in the universe that consider him God. and he has kind of these godlike powers. So I just am curious about. I don't know if the movie's already 2.5 hours. I don't know how much more we could add, but I wouldn't have minded knowing like a little more of his backstory a little bit. But that's just me. And it didn't take. That was not one of my complaints necessary of the movie. I just personally was just intrigued by him and curious about where he came from and stuff like that. And I don't know if there is an explanation to that. But I assume he's from the comics, but I don't know if he is or not. I don't know enough about the Guardians. Is he? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure on his backstory, his origin story, but I know for a fact he's straight out of the comics.
Okay.
One of the best things about the movie is perhaps one of the worst things about the movie is that it tugs on you so hard with the emotion towards the end, specifically Peter when he's floating in space trying to get to nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like overkill. And I'm like, you've already, made our hearts leap in our throats 2 or 3 times by now. And now you're gonna like kill Peter. It's like, come on, like what are you doing?
Right.
It's a good scene on its own, but
I was conflicted about that scene as well for a couple of reasons. Mm-hmm. Part of me wondered if the movie was going to actually kill off Peter, like if they were, if James Gunn was going to, I don't know how else to say it, have the balls to kill off Peter, at the end of this movie. But at the same time, if they did kill him off, I was going to go, is this really how Peter's going to die? Like, is this?
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like a good death for Peter. And so then, and I know this is going to maybe be nitpicky to you, but this was the absolute worst moment in the entire movie for me, is seeing Adam Warlock's finger come into screen, and it was like the Michelangelo painting. I actually said out loud, I like rolled my eyes and said out loud, this is so stupid. Like, I just hated that moment. And then Adam Warlock saves him, which I don't mind Adam Warlock saving him. I just didn't like that image. I don't know why James Gunn did that, but
it was too on the nose.
It was way too on the nose.
Yeah,
especially since the guy's name is. I know he's Adam. His name is Adam, and they're doing the Adam thing. It's like
it's a juxtaposition. Yeah. It was way too on the nose. But I mean, there are a lot of well, I don't know about a lot, but there are a few references to artwork in this movie. I know in the beginning when Nebula is carrying Peter, I think that's a Cain and Abel painting. I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I agree. That was way too on the nose. And yeah, I also agree. I was conflicted. Like I said, it was a nice scene on its own, but it was a little too much.
Yeah, I agree.
With everything that we had seen prior, Rocket pretty much he was dead. Like let's just say he died, and then they brought him back to life.
Right. And I really liked that scene. I liked Chris Pratt's performance in that scene a lot. He gave a ton of emotion in that scene, and I thought it was amazing. And I even liked Animal Heaven, seeing Lila and her saying, "Yeah, you can come with us." She's like, "But not yet." I thought that was all good. I thought, I liked all that. And so I agree because of that. And then also, like, right before the Peter in space scene was Rocket finding all those little baby raccoons and realizing he's a raccoon and wanting to save all the animals, which I thought there were a lot of animals. When that scene, all those animals are running, I was like, yeah, okay. But I thought, it's almost one too many pull on your heartstring kind of moments, in my opinion.
Yeah. But and those moments that you mentioned were beautiful moments. I think my favorite moment was the not yet moment, because it just reestablished the theme of purpose. And then you got the moment when Rocket finally accepts that he's a raccoon, that just reaffirms the theme of purpose. So I really like, thematically, this movie is great. James Gunn really knows how to marry theme and character development like no other person. So that was like that was the best thing about this movie is the meshing together of the theme and the character development.
Another technical aspect of the film that I actually really liked, and I think this is the first Marvel movie physical release to get dual aspect ratios. But I thought the dual aspect ratios in the movie actually looked pretty good. Did you notice that?
No, I watched it on Disney Plus, and
Okay.
it was IMAX the whole time.
Oh, it was? So the Blu-ray, I don't know about the 4K because I watched it on Blu-ray, goes back and forth between 185 and 239. And there's actually at least one moment where you see it expand on screen. And I think it's when Nebula sees the High Evolutionary's like pyramid start to rise out of the ground while they're on Counter Earth. And she like looks up at it. I'm pretty sure it expands. But I liked it. It wasn't, I remember when we talked about Transformers the last night, how just distracting it was because it was just random. I thought this movie did a pretty good job of utilizing the two different aspect ratios, and I liked it. And like I said, it's the first MCU movie, I believe, to do that on the physical release anyway.
Yeah,
I may have to watch it on Disney Plus to see the whole IMAX ratio for the whole thing, but I like the Blu-ray version. Well, I guess
John Murphy did the score for this movie.
I like John Murphy a lot. Since it was the first time I saw the movie, the score was I didn't really notice it, I guess. I mean, I know, so I think it was fine, but I can't really comment on it, I guess. I'm gonna try to pay more attention to it next time I watch it, but it didn't stand out, I guess you could say to me. How do you feel?
I noticed it a lot more this third watch. It's really good. I prefer Tyler Bates.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like about this particular score is that John Murphy made us wait for the Guardians of the Galaxy theme.
Right, yeah.
For when Rocket returns. When I heard the theme, I was like, yes, let's go.
It's awesome.
I was so happy when I finally heard it.
So let's talk about the end, basically. Peter decides to go back to Earth. Rocket becomes the new leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the new Guardians are Rocket, Groot, Adam Warlock, a girl from Counter Earth, I guess, or that was on the ship anyway. And I feel like there's one more that I'm not thinking of.
Kraglin and Cosmo.
Kraglin, that's what it was. Yeah, Kraglin and Cosmo. Yeah, we didn't really talk about Cosmo. Well, we did a little bit, I guess. The whole bad dog, good dog thing was good. But how do you feel about the Guardian? I doubt they're going to make another Guardians movie. I feel like this, or if they do, it's not going to be James Gunn. But I don't really see them making another Guardians movie with that lineup. But how did you feel about that post-credit scene?
Oh yeah, I liked it. I loved that Rocket became the new leader of the team. It felt absolutely right.
Yeah.
I do agree. I don't think they're gonna make another Guardians movie. I feel like that would kind of be blasphemous. But I would like to see this team specifically. I want to see Rocket leading this team. I want to actually see him in an active leadership role.
Show up like in another Marvel movie. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, and not just, because him and Peter kind of went back and forth in the first two movies.
Right, yeah.
And I guess you could say Rocket was like an unofficial second in command. And,
although I would have always assumed it was Gamora. Like, I would have always assumed Gamora was probably the second in command. But I think Rocket probably thought he was the second in command.
But the thing about I always thought it was Rocket because, one, he was like the actual captain. He drove the
right. Yeah.
He drove the ship, and he had so much knowledge about the galaxy. And not saying that Gamora didn't. Obviously, she did because of her father, and she was a very capable warrior. But she didn't feel like a leader to me. She felt a little bit more like a loner. And Rocket, although he was kind of a loner, I know he was with Groot, but he could still be considered a little bit of a loner through his personality. But he felt more like a natural born leader that didn't necessarily want to be, but he realized he was with a team full of idiots with Drax and Peter,
Right.
and then Mantis showed up, and then Groot is not all there.
Right.
So he kind of felt like, he had to hold everybody together. Like he's definitely the glue of the team for sure. So that's kind of why I felt, he was like the unofficial second in command. Because if it wasn't for Rocket, like the group would have fell apart a long time ago.
Yeah, that's probably true. And then there's a second post-credit scene that really is nothing, although there is a little Easter egg about the Christmas special in that scene where Peter's grandfather's reading a newspaper, and one of the headlines is "Aliens abducted me" or something. Kevin Bacon tells the story or something like that. But they're just talking about something random, and then it cuts to black, and it says the legendary Star-Lord will return. So we're going to see more Peter Quill, obviously, at some point. It didn't really do much for me. Marvel kind of has the tendency to do this lately where, well, I don't know about lately, but I feel like it started, I don't know.
I think it started in phase 3.
Yeah, they started putting their big post-credit scene in mid-credits, and then at the very end, they just kind of did usually it's a little joke thing. It might have started with the first Avengers, where it was the shawarma gag, because that was actually a hilarious, I mean, I love that moment. But I remember Thor: The Dark World had a very just kind of throwaway.
I don't even remember that one.
There's this creature. So the mid-credit scene is him showing up, kissing Jane, I think. But then you sit through the whole credits, and there's a creature that's from, I don't know if it's from Asgard or if it's from a different dimension or something, but it's still on Earth, and it's just runs across the screen. And that was pretty much all it was. It was just nothing. And there's been a couple like that. And that's kind of how I felt about this one. Really, the point of of that scene was just to say Star-Lord will be back. So it was whatever. It was fine. And thankfully for me, I just was able to fast forward so I could get to it. Sometimes it feels like you got to sit in the theater. I mean, I don't mind sitting through the credits. I think it's actually, it can be nice because, a lot of people put a lot of hard work into these movies. And so sitting through the credits, I feel like is, not a bad thing to do, obviously. But, sometimes it can feel like those credits go on for 15 minutes, but before you get to that little post-credit scene.
It's because you're waiting on the post-credit scene,
right?
That's why I feel so long.
I remember seeing the it must have been Iron Man 2, and a neighbor of mine.
Iron Man 2 has some long credits. I think,
right.
Yeah. I remember working at the movie theater, and I think it was Iron Man 2. I remember standing there waiting on the post-credit scene. I was like, man, I don't remember these credits being so long, because the movie had been out for about 4 or 5 days at that point. I was like, man, why does this feel like I've been standing here for 7 minutes watching these words go by?
I wonder if it just scrolled slowly for that movie or something. But I remember seeing it, and there was a neighbor happened to be at the same screening, so he sat with us. And he obviously was not, and I mean, the MCU was brand new at that point, but he didn't know the protocol yet. And so he was too polite to say anything, but once the Thor tease happened at the end of that movie, he was like, oh, he goes, man, I was wondering why we were sitting here. He was like, I was thinking, can we go? And I actually didn't know the protocol when I saw the first Iron Man. I got up and left during those credits.
Well, nobody did.
Right. Well, the people in my theater apparently did, because I was standing out outside the auditorium talking to friends, and then all of a sudden a bunch of people started coming out, and I was like, was there something at the end? And some stranger was like, yeah, Nick Fury shows up and talks about the Avengers, and I was like, what? So I was pissed.
I didn't get to see Iron Man in theaters. That's the only one that I haven't seen in theaters, which was the first one. But I had pirated it and watched it at home. Well, I knew my mother wasn't going to take me to see it, so I was like, I'm watching this movie one way or another. So I remember sitting there watching it on my computer, being super excited. And no one told me about the post-credit scene.
So did Did you not see it on your pirated version, or did you skip
No,
to the end?
I did. I saw it. I just sat through the credits. I don't know what made me do that.
Right.
But I just sat through the credits on my computer and I was like, oh, they're doing it. They're actually doing it.
That's another thing that Marvel has done to us is now we feel like we have to sit through the credits of everything because there might be something at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I don't sit through everything. I definitely don't sit through everything. Superhero movies, yes. But
there's actually
everything else, like if it's science fiction or action, I'll Google it to see if I need to sit through.
I was about to say AMC, actually, if you go on the AMC app under movie details, there's something called Run P, which gives you times in the movie where you could go use the bathroom and it'll tell you what you missed. But it'll also tell you if there's anything in the credits. So if it's a movie, if it's a superhero movie, I'm pretty sure they're going to show something, I'll stick around. But like when we saw 10, I looked it up on Run P and I think it said there's nothing extra, and I was like, okay, we can go. So I do kind of look it up to see for certain things, but well, I think we should probably wrap it up since we're going a bit over time here. I'm curious what you would rate Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. How would you rate this film?
I think it's no secret. I really, really like this movie. I really liked the first one. Wasn't a huge fan of the second one, although I've warmed up to the second one. This one does, in my opinion, it does everything, all the good stuff in the first one, and you know, the good stuff in the second one. It does that on a deeper level, and again, I think this is one of, if not James Gunn's best movie. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it 4.5 Guardians emblems. I think that's a Ravager emblem on there. So.
I'm struggling to decide what I want to give this movie. I wasn't able to really articulate very well to you what wasn't working for me. So take my grade with a grain of salt because it will most likely change in the future. I'd love to revisit this movie a little bit down the road and see how I feel about it. Much like Guardians 2. I wasn't looking forward to rewatching Guardians 2 when we did that episode, and I ended up kind of enjoying that movie a little bit more around, and I think I watched it even another time and enjoyed it even more that time, so I'm sure that will happen with this movie.
Yeah, it took me 3 times of watching that movie to kind of warm up to it.
Yeah, and so I know you like this one right off the bat, but I don't know. I'm just so my score is going to be probably much lower than it deserves. And like I said, we'll revisit it, and maybe I'm sure I'll end up giving it a higher score later. But for right now, I'm going to go with 3. I don't know. Teefs out of 5. So I'm
3 Teefs out of 5.
So yeah. So I'm going to go with 3. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear what other people think about this movie. So if you love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or if you are not a fan, I would love to hear your opinions. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also comment on our Instagram or tweet at us. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment down below what you think about the movie. Let us know. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I think that about wraps it up, though, for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.
I could see why you could not really understand what just happened.
Glitch in the Matrix there, man. That was weird.
Oh man.